to the Dignity Dialogue with your host, Joe Kittinger.
Another Dignity Dialogue. I am Joe Kittinger. I'm here with April Johnson. How you doing, April?
I'm good, thanks. Good to be here.
We are doing something that we've never done before.
I know,
I'm
super excited.
We're going over the pond. This is international, you guys. We're going international all the way over to England for our guest today, Gifty Enright. Gifty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So good to have you.
So good to have you. And Gifty wrote a book called Octopus on a Treadmill, Women, Success, Health, and Happiness. She focuses on coaching women in the workplace. And I had loved this quote that we captured for you. And it says, "I marry the science of the West, Eastern philosophy, and the wisdom of Africa, and my approach to women's lifestyles." There is so much richness in that. And your name is fantastic.
Thank you.
Gifty. Tell us about what you do in your world.
So what I do, for me, I'm lucky enough to be in this phase of my life to be doing all sorts of interesting things. So I do public speaking, and I also work with corporates, not just corporates, organizations, on well-being, women and well-being in the workplace, which normally tends to fall into the, because of the women aspect, falls into the diversity and equity agenda type thing. And I also coach women on a one-to-one basis. So there's if you like, there's the bigger thing, as in talking on stages and platforms, shooting the same message across whoever will listen. And then there is the one-to-one where I'm getting into people's lives and changing it and re-engineering it to get them to live in an optimal way, particularly working mothers, so they don't burn out.
Because that's part of your story. Tell us about your story.
So this is going back years now. I found myself standing in a doctor's office, clutching a spreadsheet of 14 symptoms. And before going to this particular doctor, I'd been to see a few doctors, my own personal doctor. And in England, we have what is called the NHS, which is free healthcare at point of delivery service, whatever. And I'd been a few times, and because my leg was not hanging off, right, nobody was taking me seriously. And it was like, yeah, you're working full time, you've got small kids. So what if you're tired? That is the norm. So what if you can't sleep? That is just the norm. Go away, you'll be fine. Until it got to a point where my husband could not take my whinging anymore. I mean, he couldn't take my complaining anymore. And I was just a misery to be around. So he said to me, we've got to go private. We need to sort you out. This is no life. I was just existing, doing what I had to do, and then collapsing on the sofa every night. And so I went private, and suddenly they wanted to put me on all these medications. So you go from one extreme of nothing is wrong with you, yet fine, to, hey, here's a whole raft. Now you're prepared to pay. There you go. So I thought, no, there's got to be a middle ground. And I went on a journey just to find health for myself. And on that journey, I realized I had to change my lifestyle. I wasn't living well. And I personally believe that women, particularly when you go in and have a baby, before you leave the hospital, somebody should call you and go, here is how you should live from now on. But nobody does that, because you come home with a baby, your life is infinitely more complicated, but there's nothing. It's like you have to know what to do. You're carrying on, and you're responsible for another life. There's your own life, there's your partner, then there's the career, then there's your parents, aging parents you have to look after. It's just exhausting, and so on my journey, I literally had to do a complete 180 with my life and change everything from, what I ate to sleep, to exercise, to socially, how I was looking over by myself too, emotionally, how I processed my emotions, to mindset, everything. It was a complete overhaul. And I came out of that tunnel a completely different person. And I thought, every woman needs to know this. And that was the start of my shouting from every stage that would have me.
That is awesome.
I love that.
I don't know what it's like to be a woman, Gifty. And I know it's different. I'm not ignorant to say, oh, well, come on. It's different. I mean, and that's why I'm glad April's here too. Because you can relate.
I do know what it's like to be a woman.
Well, and balancing so much.
And balancing so much. And the world is a very different stage, I think, for women than it is for men. And I say that to say, not meaning worse or better, just different. We're just different. And so the way that we care for ourselves should be different. We can't care. The way you take care of yourself and the way I take care of myself is infinitely different, because we are different people. We're, male and female. It's not much different than when we talk about, dignity, and we talk about how people are motivated. We're all motivated differently. We all come from different experiences and backgrounds. And so it's important to have very open conversations about the fact that we have to treat one another differently, and put things on the plate to eat that are different.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's a good thing. So I was excited when I took a look at your book. I have not read it yet, but I'm going to, because I love the title. I immediately had a vision of what that would be when I read the title.
Octopus on a treadmill.
On a treadmill. I was like, good Lord. If you put big hair on her, that'd be me.
Yeah. And interestingly, Joe, it was my husband that came up with that title.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, it was a man that came up with that title, because he saw my struggles and everything like that. And again, when it comes to the educational bit, because in my book, in terms of the lifestyle changes that I talk about, people are, why do you aim that as women? Because that's just universal. Everybody will benefit from eating well, sleeping well, exercise, so those things are universal, correct, on the lifestyle point. But then on top of that, there's another layer of being a woman, and the societal expectations on a woman, and also men understanding the unique set of challenges that women face, so that they can be allies to help us in terms of the struggles that we have to deal with.
Let's talk about those. Tell us what those upper level areas are that you refer to.
As in the additional layer for women, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's go to the workplace, for example, right? And what women face, the biases that women face, that for men it just goes over their head. I mean, one time I was giving a talk, and I was mentioning imposter syndrome, and this guy put his hand up and he's like, "What is an imposter syndrome?" And I'm like, if you were a woman, you would know this, but. And so the biases the women face in the workplace, right? So there's things like performance bias, for example, where people assume that a man, will do a better job. There's just an assumption. And a woman has to go in there and prove herself, whereas this is just assumed. And I mean, I was talking to a VP of an IT company, and she'd been to a conference, and she was standing there with one of her information architects, who's a man. So this guy works for her. But then somebody from another company wanted to come and talk to the VP, and saw both of them standing there, and just assumed that it was the man that was the VP, and that she was, I don't know what he thought she was, but probably, his secretary. And she was fuming at this, but that is a performance bias right there. And then, again, you have things like attribution bias, where I'm not sure how many people know was a woman that invented the Wi-Fi, but everybody knows about Einstein, right? So they're clever men out there, they do clever things, but they're clever women too. And it's not there in the headline. So there's the attribution bias of men get, attributed or was accredited for the things they create and get the credit, but women not so much, but they're easily blamed for the things going wrong. And then there's a small matter of the maternal bias. The moment you decide to get pregnant and you start showing, God help you, because suddenly people assume that your brain has stopped working, you've got maternity brain, blah, blah, blah. And, and if you decide after a certain age to have a hot flush, again, God help you, because you're menopausal, you can't think straight. Do you know what I'm saying? These are all the biases that women face in the workplace. So there's tons of it. I mean, I could go through lots of biases, but for them to go in there and battle with these every day, day in, day out, that is exhausting. Really, it's exhausting. And so if your health is subpar, if you don't know how to manage your emotions, and you go in there with a set of challenges waiting for you to deal with, that can just burn you out very easily. And then also, when it comes to McKinsey did this research that they call, the broken rungs. So women, at the entry level now, actually, into the workplace, women, both male and female, percentages are the same in terms of entry level, right? But then what happens at the senior level? The women fall out. Why do they fall out? Why do you get very few women getting to the top? Because our biology does not work in our favor. Because normally at the time that most people are stepping into management for the first time, they have the temerity to go get pregnant. And then, of course, life becomes complicated. You don't have the flexibility to perhaps do overtime or whatever it is you want to do. And work is not your be or end all, because you have got other stuff in your life. And then that starts counting against you. And if you don't have an enlightened employer that gives you flexibility, then it all begins to fall into the two difficult brackets. So the women that can afford to leave, they have partners that will support them, leave, because, life is too short. And then those that can't afford to leave stagnate, because, they don't want to take on additional responsibilities, because again, can they deliver, blah blah blah. So you get the few that soldier on and go through, but the few that soldier on, according to research, they tend to have crazy kids, but that's a whole different conversation.
But let's put that on the list, because that's a great conversation.
That is a great conversation.
Right, and then you have those that pay the ultimate sacrifice of, maybe they want children, but they don't have it because they think, hang on, this is going to be too expensive, because they don't want to pay the maternal penalty. And I think it was last week, some CEO, I forget the name of the company now, he's taking paternity leave, and it's a big deal. It's in the news and everything that he's taking the paternity leave. I'm thinking, and I posted this on LinkedIn, like, hello, and he was worried about, men are worried about how taking paternity leave will be perceived and how it's going to affect their careers. I'm like, now you know how women have been feeling forever in terms of the price we've had to pay in perception, our promotional prospects, blah, blah, blah. So that is just it in the workplace. But other things that we have to face in terms of the societal construct, and again, both men and women pay a price here, because the man, in terms of societal construct, is supposed to be the breadwinner. Right? So when the roles switch, society doesn't view that very well. The man is then seen as a wimp, whatever it is. So there's that wimp penalty, right? But then, because of that construct, as in the man is supposed to go make the money and the woman is supposed to be the homemaker, when she's not seen as the homemaker and she's there perhaps aggressively pursuing a career, there's all, and she has children, she always comes under pressure to, both roles have to do it like 150%, because she cannot be seen to fail, because then she will be seen as a bad mother. I'm not sure that lens is never sort of looked at the father. And you always hear about, can a woman have it all? When men have to have been having it all forever. Why can't a woman have it all? Why is it that we are the ones that have to compromise? So anyway, there you go.
Wow. That is a little gifty right there.
I love it. Thank you for the gift.
No,
Gifty.
but you're so right. I mean, it's we laugh because we love your energy and we love your passion, right? Certainly not this subject. So there so there are these constructs that exist, right? So I'm guessing you teach how to get your head around thinking differently. Like, who cares if everyone else thinks that way? You're going to step in and do you. Is that when it comes to the emotional preparedness for a career woman? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So there are two ways in terms of what I do. So again, with organizations, in terms of how to support the women folk, right? And then for the women themselves, as in to step up and take responsibility for their lives. Because if you're waiting for somebody to come and see you and say, oh, you're so clever, come here for that promotion, it's not going to happen, right? Oh, you're so clever, we're going to break all the rules and give you this exception so we can put you on a very particular career path because you're so exceptional. It doesn't happen. You have to create that for yourself. And so on a personal level, I'll come to corporate stuff in a minute. On a personal level, you have to work on your own self-esteem to be able to have the confidence to ask for what you deserve, because a lot of women put up or shut up because they just don't have the skills to ask for what they want. So they don't have the self-esteem and they don't have the communication skills to ask for what they want. So when I'm working with women, that is what I'm doing. And then there's also the life balance skills. So people I got asked this question once, as in, when I'm dealing with burnout, what am I doing? Am I ahead of it or am I at the end of it? So when I'm dealing with my corporate work and the speaking and education, that's at the front of it. So trying to put preventative stuff in place and training them to have policies and stuff to support these women so they don't get into burnout, right? And incidentally, whatever protective stuff you're putting in policies and stuff, the men benefit as well. It is really about the dignity of your employees and making sure that you're treating them as a whole human being, right? But when you come back to the individual one-to-one type thing, normally the people that come to me are in burnout, right? So they're on the bad side of it, shall we say. And is getting them, as in where I was, getting them out of the burnout, stabilizing their biological systems, so they don't wake up thinking, what is my life about? Where am I going? Why am I even here? So getting them out of that space, because when you're in burnout, that's one of the key symptoms, is apathy, is negativity. You just question yourself and your value and all that, apart from the physical stuff, as in you're physically exhausted and stuff. So is first of all putting routines and protocols in place to support you physically, so your body starts feeling well, right? What is it they say? A sound mind in a sound body. There's a Latin phrase. I can't trust myself with Latin at 2:30 in the afternoon. So,
is that a Latin phrase?
I think it's mens sana in corpore sano. Anyway, so that's me in the Latin, but a sound mind in a sound body, something like that. But so stabilizing, the biological systems, and then looking at the communication side of things, the self-esteem side of things. This is where we're getting into the emotional side. So you understand your self-worth. You understand that, you're not your career, you're not your job, you're not whatever it is. And as a human being, by virtue of the fact that you're here, you're breathing, you're alive, you are worth it. Yes. And getting people to understand that. And so if you operate from that paradigm, then if you then acquire the communication skills, you can have a measured conversation with your boss, your manager, whoever it is, to say, listen, this is the support I need. How can we put this in place? Because this is the value I bring. and I am worth it. So we need to put things in place to support me.
I love that. I love that you come back to yourself, coming back to your self-worth, to be able to speak to your leader, to be able to take those things and say, this is what I need because I know what my value is so important. It comes back to us. What do we have to do to build that our own self-worth? And then I use a phrase often, we teach people how to treat us.
I agree.
And so we have to take that time to really know ourselves, to get ourselves in a place to be able to then teach people, here's what I need from you. Here's what I need to be, to continue to be successful. And the idea that as I am successful, I am being successful in a larger picture of this company, this business. You know, as I am successful as a woman here at Prophit is successful.
Right.
You know, and so it all works when we can kind of get to that place where we know what our worth is, and it takes us a little bit. You know, I've mentioned in lots of podcasts areas of growth in my life, and it took some work to go from being a hot mess, you know, to being what I am today and understanding my value in myself and the importance of taking care of myself and all those kinds of things. It takes time, and it's wonderful that you have, that you're so passionate about helping specifically women and even more specifically women with children and families to really grasp that in the midst of everything else that they have to take care of or that they feel they have to be perfect for. And so that's awesome.
So because I chose to specialize in women, apart from the fact that we're awesome, is that we are at the center of a lot of people's lives. So you take one woman, if she has children, the children, you know, and again, there's research to support this from London School of Economics, right? So the child's emotional health is actually dependent on the mother's emotional well-being. So this is what I mean by the women that push through in the workplace and keep going without seeing to themselves, they end up with the crazy kids. Because if your emotional well-being is all over the place, the children, that's the worldview you're setting for them, because they don't know any better. So they inherit that, and they think that craziness is normal. They think the lack of self-esteem is normal, and they don't understand boundaries because you don't understand boundaries. You're allowing your boss to make you work, 36 hours a day or whatever it is. The kids never see their mom because mom has got to work 36 hours. And so they think that, hang on, okay, working stupid, crazy hours is the norm, right? And so allowing people to override your boundaries is the norm. And so when you work on the woman, not only are you getting her to an optimal state so she's able to better contribute in the workplace, and employers, if they've got, if they're on the ball, will know that if you have a resource, it's better to have a resource that is performing at their optimal rather than being suboptimal, because that's where it's hitting your bottom line. But if we take it out of the workplace and we bring it home, there's all these children, the next generation, right? These are the next people going to come up with the next whatever of E equals MC squared, or the next Google, or whatever it is. And we don't want them to be crazy. And we need them to pay our pensions, right? And so this is an investment, a societal investment for everybody. And the person that's bringing them up, even though they've chosen to do so voluntarily, and paying a penalty for it at work and all the rest of it, it behooves them to do a good job on these children. And so if you work on the woman, those children feel stable. And the partner, be it male or female, they also feel stable. And that is why this fulcrum, this central person that a lot of lives revolves around, has to be made stable. And if you ask me, it actually affects the GDP of countries if they take care of their women.
Yeah, wow.
I would agree with you. Yeah, wholeheartedly.
I have a question that comes up. Now, our company's been around for 22 years. 80% of our employment has been female. Not because I favor women, that just we're better candidates when interviewing. Though I do have a statement that says fair is not equal, and this is always an ongoing challenge, okay? And I'd like your opinion on this. Danica and I own the company, my wife, and we feel flexible when it comes to family situations, right? Not everyone's in the same situation. And so over the years, we have heard people say, well, we're not going to have children, and all these other moms are getting like preferential treatment, because maybe they're coming in at 9 and, they're probably maybe spending an hour at night to make up. I mean, they've always made up for everything or their obligation or whatever they promised to do. But we're flexible, right, with people's situations. And so we always say fair is not equal. Is there a way, or have you a way to communicate that, maybe your life isn't there now, but it could be at some point, whether it's kids or whether it's caring for a parent or whether it's this or that, and to have some empathy? Let's talk about that. I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Let me at it. Let me at that.
This is going to be good.
This is going to be good.
I'm rolling up my sleeves here. Now, so this year, the theme on IWD, International Women's Day, the theme was equity, right? And embracing equity, because for a long time, people had confused equality with equity. And so that goes back to your statement of fair is not equal. And I, for one, was thrilled that finally the conversation had moved from equality. Well, it had to start somewhere. But it moved from equality to equity, because now equity is more of an individualistic approach. And so it doesn't matter whether you're a parent, you're a man, you're disabled, whatever. It is about the outcome. We all need to produce 10 balls, right? Now, your arms are shorter. So for you to be able to produce the same 10 balls that perhaps Joe that's got longer arms can produce, maybe we need to put an aperture behind you that gets you closer. That is equity, right? And so looking at the outcome that needs to be produced, and for everybody, what do they need? So for the working mother, she needs flexibility. For the couple that don't have children, maybe they have a horse. I don't know. What is it they need? And so it's looking at each individual. What do they need to allow them to be able to produce the same outcome? And in some instances, some people, in terms of what you have to give, and always there's a limited resource, blah, 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 balanced against that constraint, some people. So when we're looking at what the much maligned white middle class male, God bless them, my husband is one, right? And it's like, oh God, they're not getting it. But it's not because they're not getting it. It's just because the way society is structured, privilege accrues to them. So it's not like they're not getting it. They don't need it because, they're not battling the performance bias. They're not battling the maternal bias and blah, 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 right? So they don't need it in terms of that equity because that privilege is already accrued to them, whereas it hasn't accrued to certain members of society and they need it. But does that mean that the much maligned white middle class male doesn't need something? He does. Of course he does. And so it's looking at that individual. What does he need? Maybe communication skills, maybe whatever, to allow them to be able to perform at the level that they need to perform. So looking at the individual, doing the gap analysis and seeing where is the gap here for you? What do you need? How do we bridge the gap? When you move the conversation from equality to equity, that gets rid of the resentment.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great.
And that really has been a huge step, I think, in the right direction overall for women and really for all people. When you begin to not make the conversation about equality and instead equity. And I think that's when we talk about flexibility, and living in the gray. You know, sometimes we say, "Oh, it's a gray area," like you can't understand it. Like, you know, there's not an answer, but really, it's just life, and we need different things because of different reasons, and we have to be able to have care and concern for the other people that we work with, the other people that we live with, the other people that we, you know, do community with, to understand that their needs might be different than our needs, and we still want their needs to be met. And I think the great thing that you mentioned that I love is the balance of that with production.
Right, like results. Like, here are the results.
Right.
Now, if you can get the results done and you need some of this flexibility, then we're good with results.
Exactly. And I would think that it's different if there are changes being made. There are things that you're putting in place that are maybe different for one coworker to another coworker, and you're not getting the result, right?
Yeah.
Even with the flexibility, well, then that's a different conversation, right? That you have as a leader. That's a different conversation.
Yes. That's a capability issue. So, you know, and that should not, and so capability. So sometimes when somebody's not delivering because they're not getting the support they need to be able to deliver, then, you know, the person just get, you know, and thinking that person's not fit for purpose. That's not true. Whereas when you look at the equity conversation, so let's say we have two graduates come in as intake, right? So at the starting point, they all have a degree in whatever degree they need to have in, right? So they can technically both do the same in terms of the capability, but maybe someone has got yet another skill set on top of that this other person doesn't have. So it's more of, if you do your analysis, you will know, okay, this particular skill set is lacking. We need to send this person on that training course. So capability is different from equity. And if you give them the equity, so I'm not sure if you guys have seen that picture of people standing watching a football game, and there's a tall guy, there's a guy in the middle who can, so the tall guy can see, the guy in the middle can see, but the short guy can't see. And so putting a sort of a stool there for the short guy to stand on so he can also see and contribute. Right. And so the tall guy, stool or no stool, makes no difference to him. He can see, he's tall, he can see above the fence. If you want everybody to see above the fence, what do you give to them? And so it's what you put underneath, right? But if you've done that, the equity bit, and people, they're still looking at the fence and they can't see, you're looking at it and you're like, mate, hang on, we've given you all the same, everybody's the same height. Why can't you still see over the fence? Then there might be a capability issue that you have to address.
Yeah, great visual. That's a great visual.
That's awesome. Gifty, this has been absolutely fantastic. What are some words of maybe some encouragement or first steps for individuals who might be listening to this going, can you give me, one or two action items that I could, that I could focus on right now? What would it be?
So if we're talking about it on an individual level rather than a corporate level, so you, the individual, what you can do for yourself, what I will say in simple terms is, if your body's not feeling good, you're not feeling good. If you're in pain, you're not feeling good. So, and so when you wake up and your body's not feeling good, everything is a problem. And the tiniest thing pushes you over the edge, right? Everything suddenly becomes a challenge, and you're easily tipped into overwhelm. And so the one thing I would say is you need to start looking after your body. So whatever that is for you, and you need to start from somewhere, because normally when I work with people, I'm looking at mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and they're like, oh God, these are 4 things. Where do I start? It doesn't matter where you start. Just start. So you can decide maybe on the physical. Maybe you decide I'm going to start sleeping well, for example, right? So the requirement is what, 8 hours every night. How many people, do that? They're watching Netflix till whenever, which is what I used to do. And then I would complain about being exhausted, right? So I wasn't eating well. I was up watching Netflix, and then, anyway. So if you decide what it is. And for some people, eating well is easier for them to do. For some people, the sleep thing is easy for them to do. Do you know, for some people, exercise is easy for them to do. Whatever it is that contributes to your physical well-being, choose one thing and do it, and start feeling the difference in your body. Because once you start feeling the difference physically, it starts giving you that mental fitness, starts giving you emotional bandwidth and mental clarity to be able to start tackling your problems.
I love it.
It's awesome. Okay, Gifty, how do people reach out to you if they want to learn more and connect with you?
GiftyEnright.com is my website. I am on all the socials. I say on all the socials. Well, most of them. I'm on most of the socials. But if you go to GiftyEnright.com, you will get access to all my socials. And if people want to be coached by me, again, on my website, if you go to coaching, I've got a free webinar. You can watch that and see if I'm your cup of tea. If I'm your cup of tea, reach out and we'll, because I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody wants that good life. Do you know? So,
well, I could make tea and talk to you for days. Gifty.
Same here, April.
I love it.
We could talk for days, I'm sure.
We could. I love it. I think I am going to reach out you because you were talking about burnout, and I was thinking this week I'm writing and scripting. We have a new curriculum on burnout, and I was like, I am going to reach back out to you because I just think that some of the things that you have in that beautiful head of yours would be so helpful to just grasp a little bit more information for some of the things that we're doing. So I'm excited.
Yes.
I'm excited.
And it all comes down to dignity. I mean, the dignity of the human condition, the dignity of the company you work for, right? Hitting metrics and following the values. We have to join together. It's all connected. It's all one. And that's why I love the your perspective on equality versus equity. I think that's spot on.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And if you focus on that human dignity in your workplace, it will impact positively on your bottom line.
100%.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Gifty. This is another Dignity Dialogue. I want you to have a great month and watch our other past episodes as well as we tackle important subject matter always around human dignity. Have a great rest of your day.
See ya.
This has been the Dignity Dialogue with Joe Kittinger. Talk at you later.